Good afternoon, everybody, and a very good evening if you are in Asia. And GM, welcome to Web3 once again here back at Paul's Penthouse, Mr. Dominic.
Hello.
It's a good day, isn't it?
It's a great day. It's a great day to learn about AI, data, blockchain, and all the other things.
Matthijs, you're back on the show. You've been here a few times, but that's been quite a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a while,
Um,
but it's super cool to be here again. Thanks for the invite, man.
Of course, man. Of course. Yeah, we have this new show called the AI Spotlight, and we figured, I'm just checking what are the projects that I like, that I followed, that I know, and obviously we end up with you guys quite
Mhm.
quickly. So would love to know everything that's going on. I mean, I think we'll just do a regular deep dive to find out everything about what you're building there, but obviously also hear some of the new stuff. Actually, one of your team members showed me the new AI tool that you guys built, sort of a chat gbt for your own data sets. I don't know, super interesting what it looked like, but we'll find
Yeah,
all about that. But first, Matthijs, maybe you can give us a bit of an intro about yourself. Who is Matthijs? What is your background? What is your journey to
sure.
Web3 and before you started Nuklai, so to say?
Sure. Yeah, so Matthijs de Vries, but for non-Dutch speakers, I'm Matt, simply. I'm based in the Netherlands, from the Netherlands, and I've been always a software developer since I was really, really young. And I worked in many different industries with many different technologies, but they always had in common that it was something around data, large amounts of data or obscure types of data, and I always had to develop like kind of the back end technologies that do something complicated with data. So that's always been like the common thread in my career.
Mm.
Then at some point, I became a manager at PostNL, which is one of the biggest employers in the Netherlands, where I was responsible for digital transformation. There, I really grew as a person and got the entrepreneurial spirit. But still, after that career, where I was there for like 9 years, I went to a small startup where I was responsible for managing couple of AI projects that was still like way before OpenAI and ChatGPT and everything. So this was like a novel self-developed AI around email management and chatbots and stuff like that. And there I got in touch for another project that I was doing inside of that startup. I got in touch with blockchain technologies. I already knew about Bitcoin, but that's it. And there I got introduced to Ethereum and smart contracts. And
Mm.
when I learned about those concepts, I was like hooked straight. So I wanted to participate. So I started to invest in ICOs. I started to buy tokens and be part of communities. And then after doing that for a while, somewhere in early 2018, everything collapsed, and I noticed like a common thread between all these projects, what kind of problems they have. And together with someone I met during that time, being part of communities, I've decided to found my own Web3 startup, which was back then Nexera. And then after doing that for a couple of years, one of the products that we've developed inside of Nexera, a data-centric product, was spinned off to Nuklai, and this is what I'm managing from day to day right now.
Okay, but was it completely spun off? So completely like independent company Nuklai now, or is it
Yes,
still connected in any way?
yeah, I mean, of course, it's connected in a sense, but not in a business sense. It's
Okay,
connected
okay,
because I'm also still involved with Nixera, although more superficial right now.
yeah,
It's definitely a spiritual connection,
yeah, that's clear.
and from a technical perspective, there's integrations, collaborations, in order to strengthen each other and each other's communities. So it's definitely always
Yeah.
that kind of connection, right? But it
Okay,
has
cool.
completely separate teams otherwise.
Okay, now got it.
Yeah, very interesting. I didn't even know about that background you had with PostNL and etc. So it's cool to hear about that. I mean, I think that's a more detailed intro than you did before.
Yeah. No. Postonel was pretty exciting back in the days because I was responsible for killing their major business. You know, because Postonel is like the mail carrier of the Netherlands, like the biggest. and their business, their income, the revenue is based on sending mail, like envelopes mail, right? And I was responsible for digitalization around that. So meaning killing the revenue so that they get revenue from digital products, which is low revenue, um, in a way to avoid that competitors would do it instead for them, and they would not have no revenue at all. So it was kind of a interesting period where you have to work against, a lot of traditional systems and people, and which was which always made me like the odd guy, which I think made me also a perfect fit there, and make me also a perfect fit in the Web3 industry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, ahead of the curve all the time, right? I think that.
Yeah, and in a way, yeah.
Nice, man. And actually, an interesting question. I guess I never asked you that before, but where did the name Nuklai come from, or Nuklai AI? How do you pronounce it? Like, what's the official?
Well, it was meant to be nuclei, but that doesn't roll off the tongue that easily for first timers, so it became nuclei or nuclei. And I'm not really like that kind of guy that says it has to be pronounced in a specific way. Like there's so many, nationalities that we have to deal with in Web3. We're so global. There's bound to be different pronunciations, and I'm on board for all of them.
And what's the meaning of nuclei or no, I guess how did you come to this name? Like, what's the story?
Yeah, so I actually started with finding a word that would fit our product in Esperanto, because Esperanto is kind of a global language that it doesn't belong to a specific culture or country, and it's used as a bridge between, they aim to be a bridge between languages. So I thought like Nuklai aims to be a bridge between different systems, so that makes sense. And then we found nucleo as the nucleus of something, and then I wanted to play a little bit with the name nucleo as the core of something related to AI. So change the name a little bit to nuclei, simply.
Cool, interesting story. I didn't know that either, man. We're learning a lot today, huh? We haven't even started.
By the way, the Nuklai official account has joined as a listener right now, so if it can be invited on stage, it should be good.
Let me have a look. Yeah, so if they request to be speaker, I can add them, but I so it's bugging, so I don't see them.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
think that like I can't find them, and if they request it, we can get them on stage for sure.
Awesomeness, perfect. Thanks, man.
All right, and I mean, I guess I would always ask you to do maybe like an elevator pitch of. Let's start there. Can you do like an elevator pitch explaining what is Nuklai? Like you already did it a little bit, right? But like maybe like in like a 30 seconds to 60 seconds, like what is Nuklai?
In one sentence, Nuklai makes working with data much easier. For businesses, it's to make their existing data processes, their existing data sources, much more interesting to work with, cheaper, faster, more efficient, etc. And also have enabling collaborations between different businesses much more trustworthy, easier, cheaper, by having those kind of revenue mechanisms, access mechanisms on chain. And for retail, for the normal user, we provide AI in a much easier way, where data for us is at the core of everything, because AI works better with better data, with more access to data. So for us, we center data and everything, and then we have a couple of building blocks for businesses and for retail users to make working with AI more easier, more fun, making working with data more low barrier.
And I guess the problem that you tried to solve with this is also is probably coming from a perspective where you were seeing that there was so much data, but companies were not either being capable of using the data they had, or not even collecting the data they had before, because they didn't even know the data was there, right?
Yeah, that's one thing. Like businesses, especially bigger businesses, they have collected data for the last decades, and this data is not unified. It's not in a single source. It's in tons of different sources, and they have to build like expensive data lakes, have to hire data scientists, consultants, professional services, and in order to build, innovation on top of this data can cost a couple of millions, or at least hundreds of thousands for smaller businesses, in order to even get ready to start building an innovation. And so that's still not spending money on the innovation itself, right? So now businesses are scrambling with the rise of generative AI on how to integrate this with how to integrate their data with LLMs, and it's very expensive, very time consuming, and that's where we come. That's where we come in.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, Dominic, does it already ring some bells of questions for you before?
No, I mean it's. I think it's quite smart, right? Because eventually, I agree with what you said, that there is a lot of projects out there that would try and collect different data streams, right?
Yeah.
But you always have the kind of, I don't want to call it an issue, but the situation that you need to enable companies to source not only different data sources and tap into them, but also to kind of harmonize the way that you can interact with them, right? You need to provide them with more or less of a unified data layer in that sense, right? And so what you guys are building is kind of, it sounds a bit like like a typical cliche, but you're not building you're not trying to mine the gold, but you're trying to build the shuffles for the gold miners in that sense, right? So, and that obviously is always a very smart move.
This is 100% it. This is how we try to position ourselves as the ones that sell the shovels for the ones digging for gold. This is exactly how we aim to position ourselves and how we see ourselves. I think when it comes to data, it has been very underrated like 2 years ago, and it started to become much more important right now, which is a good thing. And we see more and more importance giving to working with data and unlocking access to data and stuff like that. Also, the importance for data for LLMs is starting to become significantly better with RAG systems and stuff like that. But it's still there's still a lot of issues with getting unified access to a bunch of different data sources.
Yeah, I fully agree.
And yeah, for us, like with Nexus, we built something kind of unique in a sense that if from a developer's perspective, if we talk to data, we use SQL as the love language to data. And that's especially true for relational databases, like the traditional databases like MySQL, MSSQL, Postgres, stuff like that. And then, a while ago, we saw a rise of NoSQL databases like MongoDB. And they have like a little bit different query language. And then you have now vector databases, and you have a lot of businesses. They have data in just files like CSV files, JSON, XML, stuff like that. And there is no one way to get access to all of those files in the same way at once. And we said SQL should remain the love language of data. So we created a query engine, which is the core of Nexus, our core product, that allows you to use SQL to query a CSV file, a relational database, a NoSQL database, and soon also API endpoints. So you can write one SQL statement that joins an Etherscan API endpoint with a CSV file and a MySQL database as if it's just tables in a traditional database, which is, for me, it's an incredible milestone. It's technically a really big innovation because it eliminates the use for data lakes, which come with really expensive licenses. It eliminates expensive, long-lasting projects where you need consultants and data scientists in order to get access and connectors and whatever in order to have the unified access to data. And now it's just plug, play, configure, and you get going. And at the heart of it all, we have an AI agnostic infrastructure that wraps around this query engine that allows you to use any LLM. It can be a self-hosted one, it can be DeepSeek or Gemini or ChatGPT, doesn't really matter. And you can use that on top of the query engine in order to talk with all the data out there. And what we did additionally, which makes it way more useful than just talking to your own data, we made it completely MCP compatible. We hooked it up to thousands and thousands of MCP compatible tools, so you could talk with your data, combine it with Wikipedia, connect it to Salesforce without any technical knowledge, which is huge.
And this is probably what Gerben showed me when we met at Dutch Blockchain Week, right? Because it allows you to basically capture the different data sets that are within a company and then access those through one sort of operator interface.
Exactly. And you don't have to understand your data. How Nexus works is that your data remains unchanged. It remains where it is. So it's not like a data lake where you copy and ingest all the data, whatever. Though we only care about the metadata. And generative AI are very good in understanding metadata, especially if you feed them some sample data as well. And they can, we put all of that metadata inside of a vector database, and then we let the LLMs query the vector database over what data sources are relevant in order to answer a question, and or continue in a data workflow, whatever. And then once they have the metadata, they can construct the SQL statement, the query. So having that vector database with just the metadata makes it extremely scalable. It means that you can have millions and millions of data sources available at the fingertips of an LLM at any point in time. And you don't even have to know what that data is or how it's constructed and what kind of columns or whatever it's there. You just have to know what kind of question you need to ask. And when a question is answered, Nexus comes with full traceability, meaning that it shows you how it queried the vector database in order to retrieve the metadata, what that metadata looks like, what kind of SQL statement it created. It allows you to also run that SQL statement to verify yourself if the results are the same. So you have this full traceability of every step that the AI agent made in order to come with the answer. So there is no hallucinations, there is no false information, which makes it an extremely powerful tool, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's insane.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that, actually.
Yeah, and we were launching in a couple of weeks.
So the crazy thing is, and I spoke with Gerben as well about this, right? Obviously, you're building in Web3, and Web3 is the future for Web2, but you guys should focus on Web2 with this. Like, honestly, it's too good of a tool to focus on Web3, which is too small of a market for something that's this good.
Absolutely. So Web3 is an enabler, and we are also building our layer 1 blockchain for data-specific mechanisms. And this layer 1 is solely focused on organizing data transactions. So when a business wants to have access to external data, the data is often not for free, or the data, there is some gating mechanism involved, like a government would say any business in the EU might access my data, but countries like Russia, China, whatever, they are not allowed, right? This kind of constructions exist. So we provide through that L1 a trustless way to collaborate on external data. And then for the Nexus platform, you don't necessarily need that L1 if you work solely on internal data or want to connect, with more trivial sources like Wikipedia or Salesforce. And that makes it the perfect Web2 tool, where we are definitely focusing on right now on use cases in aviation, in telecoms, stuff like that, where there are very, traditional problems, all focused on data, that Nexus is perfectly suited to solve. And part of that revenue, of course, always flows back to our NAI token.
But what type of, because I was just thinking for the examples that you mentioned, so aviation, or I think also you mentioned telecommunications, What type of data are we talking about here that's relevant? Because I'm sorry, but I'm obviously biased, or I'm always kind of or already starting to think about the whole deeper narrative, right? And how that data is collected in there. And I immediately have to think of some of the projects that are basically gathering this information. So, for example, with the aviation data, it would be Wingbits. Paul, you remember we had them on in the deep and disclosed session, but probably that's not the data sources that you are talking about. So it's not on where is the plane at what point in time on its
No,
journey in the world, right? It's
no.
different data cases, right?
Yeah, take for example, not ARMS. The notification for airmans is
Yeah.
where it's around data. Like for example, now is the NATO top in the Netherlands, and the airspace is partially closed. So you have those kind of information which are shared through that system. That system is very hard to interpret, especially for long haul flights. You only get like limited amount of time in order to dig through the data, and then as a pilot you can miss data, and missing data can lead to deadly accidents. So having an AI combined on this data and make it queryable will be a very good use case that potentially saves lives. So that's a very important one. And telecommunications is a little bit more boring. It's, for example, around IoT devices with mobile data plans that the only thing that they do with each other is exchange data. And traceability is, for some use cases, very important. Is the data that has been generated by a sensor, for example, hasn't been tampered with, as someone in the middle took that data and changed it in order to make the sensor look different. Those kind of use cases where an hash or checksum of the data stored on chain can make all the difference for insurance purposes, for example. More boring, but very useful revenue-driven use cases.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. And Dominic, I remember indeed, I think I've tagged the Nuklai account like 5 times on one of the spaces already before, where it's like, man, you need to connect with these guys because they're like more towards the people that were on the space, right? The projects that were there. It's like, yo, you need to connect with these guys at Nuklai because they're building something that would align a lot with what you guys are doing. And I think in general, Matthijs, it's a very interesting niche for you guys to target that as well, the whole deep in sector, because there's such extreme amounts of data being collected through all the devices that are being deployed there.
I agree. Yeah, it's interesting. It's I was also thinking about that link more or less immediately, and obviously I also had it in mind, right? But I never like really thought about it. What kind of options there could be with Nuklai, and also the data that a lot of the deepins out there are already collecting right now.
Yeah, no, there is plenty of use cases. That's why we also partnered with Peak. It's a big deep-in project.
Yeah,
and a lot of synergies also around traceability of data, having a unified way to get access to the data, because there is no one standard in deep-in for data exchange. So there's definitely a lot of benefits for integrating Nuklai.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I mean, it aligns so much. I think we even discussed it. Peak was the first deep in project I think that joined our deep in disclosed spaces when we started those, and I think we even discussed Nuklai there because it's. I don't know. I mean, obviously we've worked at the beginning when you launched the project a bit together, Matthijs, and since then it's just always something that is on my mind when I talk with projects. Right? They mention data, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know someone who's doing something here.
That's amazing, man. That's I really appreciate that. That's super cool.
Of course, man. Of course, and I just curious to take a step back because we can talk about Deepin and Nuklai for the next 30 minutes because that's really the niche Dominic and I are the most active right now. But I'm just curious because you mentioned Nexus is almost ready, which is the tool, right? There where you can integrate and access all the data that's available, etc. But how is that going to work? Because I think that's also where I would love to understand a little bit better. What's the revenue model eventually of Nuklai, right? Like making your own layer one and stuff. There it becomes quite obvious from a tokenomics perspective. But how does it work here? And also for the people listening to understand, because I think it's a pretty straightforward business model actually, especially if you have a tool like this. Because how are you going to work with that tool? Is it going to be on a retainer model? Is it based on the amount of data that's being processed, or?
Yeah, so there actually we have to make a difference between B2C and B2B. We cater both, and for those listening that don't necessarily recognize what those terms mean, B2B is business to consumer, meaning the retail user that's going to use Nexus, and B2B is business to business. So those are like the businesses, the small medium enterprises that we're targeting to integrate Nexus in a more sophisticated way. And our business model for B2C is around different paid tiers. So a monthly payment, like with OpenAI, that you can pay in NAI or pay in USD, and it converts to NAI, where NAI is our token. And then you have different tiers. The more functionality you want, the more you will have to pay, right? And then there is interesting like agent development business model where because we allow all kinds of agents, external, internally created, that can either collaborate with each other or automate part of your workflow. And builders of agents can share their agents on Nexus so that others can use it, and they can ask they can ask money for this as well. And that money can be any type of token. So it could be their own token or Ethereum or Bitcoin, whatever. Um, and a percentage, like on an Apple store, it goes to Nuklai, and that goes back to the community through buybacks or staking rewards. And in order to make that agent available on Nexus, they will have to stake some NAI, so that it's available on the agent marketplace at all. And then for businesses, it's a little bit more complicated, but in the standard, they have kind of a membership tier where they pay a license fee, and then that's it. They install it as a product from the Google Cloud Marketplace, for example, and they just use it up to the functionality that it's within their tier. And for enterprises, where customization is part of it, it's it's a custom price, right?
Yeah, of course, that makes a lot of sense, right? And what about because I think you already mentioned it a little bit, and I guess by the fact that it's decentralized, that helps a lot. But what about the privacy side of things? Because I know, for example, and it's a conversation I also had with Gerben, where I have had a meeting. I work a lot as an advisor to a range of companies in Web 2 and Web 3, and Web 2 is mostly about AI integration, just the ChatGPT type of stuff, right? And I had a meeting with someone from the management team at BAM. You probably know it, Matthijs. It's a Dutch company. They're pretty big.
Yeah.
And they were super, super interested at looking how they can integrate AI into their workflows to make everything go faster and more efficient, etc. But the biggest thing they come across is obviously that they cannot start using ChatGPT or something like this, right? From a safety and a privacy perspective, because they can't share their data publicly.
But
Yeah,
they don't have
especially
to,
now
right? If they use the enterprise solution, they have their own custom GPT without any data sharing, right? I mean, that should be feasible.
Yes, that's theoretically true, but a lot of businesses I speak to, with the current tensions in the world, there is a very low trust in the
Okay,
US right
that's a
now for
different
European
story. Yeah,
businesses.
yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah.
a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of serious enterprises are looking for self-hosted models, like DeepSeek or whatever, the Quen, Llama, stuff like that. And we're model agnostic, so we support all those models right now. Yesterday, I tested with Quen. I tested with Llama. We have Ollama for self-hosted models that you can run on your own desktop. So we don't necessarily care about a certain model, especially because we have spoken to so many businesses that have given us similar feedback that just supporting OpenAI is not going to cut it.
Yeah. That I would agree. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess to be honest, this conversation I had quite a while ago. I'm not even sure if do you know when they released that enterprise version of
I have
ChatGPT?
no idea, but like I mean, I know that companies like I don't know BCG or something, they all have their own. So
Yeah.
Boston Consulting, they all have their own GPTs, and I kind of they're not maybe not the best company in the world, but if a company like BCG, who really handles a lot of different clients and a lot of sensitive information, is using a GPT, I would assume that for most of the companies in the world, actually, it's something that's feasible as well. But then again, BCG is a US-based company.
Yeah, exactly. And there are a lot of good alternatives in the world right now. Like yesterday, as I mentioned, I've tested with Quen 3, and it handled the use cases very well. Not necessarily a difference with ChatGPT, and it's cheaper or for free if you host it for yourself, right? So it can be very interesting to look beyond ChatGPT and see what kind of use cases are there, because I've also learned that in the past few weeks there is a lot of bad feedback on how OpenAI models are behaving right now. They feel more dumb, and that makes like working with ChatGPT for automated workflows very unreliable. Like workflows that work because they rely on data exchange between LLMs to each other. Sometimes they don't work anymore in the past few weeks because they tweaked something in the model and now they behave more unpredictable, which can destroy business if they completely rely on it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's one of the biggest issues that you see with OpenAI right now, where indeed they constantly change the locations where the AI model takes its information, its data from, and I think that's somehow, I don't know how that works in the backend, but I think that's what kills a lot of this reliability for OpenAI, so to say.
Well, they do a lot of tweaks, but because it's a black box, you don't necessarily know what kind of tweaks they're doing, why they do it, when they do it. Like this Altman dude, he's like talking after the fact. Hey, we pushed a new update live, and it's not very transparent. It's very opaque, which makes it harder for a serious business, especially in enterprise, to rely on this for automated workflows. If your revenue is based on that, I wouldn't dare it right now. So it's better to work with a model that, even if it's less intelligent, that at least is reliable, because you control how it behaves. You control when it's updated. You control when you can test it before you push a change to production. You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, I saw this post. I mean, honestly, I saw it on social media. So reliability is one side, but it's where somehow they did an update, and the basic version of ChatGPT started utilizing Wikipedia for its source, which
Yeah.
obviously is funny, right? Like, I mean, if you in any respectable education everywhere, you have to mention sources on the data that you are gathering. They always say Wikipedia is never a source. So, and they adjusted that as well, but it's just funny that these things happen, and I think that's where I think that's also something that a lot of companies are looking at, right? As you said, from a reliability perspective, that they are looking for a private, personalized solution that you guys might offer.
I think the thing is having freedom in how you want to navigate this. So the problem here isn't necessarily Wikipedia itself, because I think in a lot of cases Wikipedia is a fine source. But if you want to get scientific or like really factual for important use cases, obviously you get out of Wikipedia. The problem here is that you didn't have that choice where it takes this information from. And that's why in Nexus we are completely agnostic to anything. We if you step in Nexus, you cannot do anything. You have to configure your model. You have to configure like what kind of tools you want to use. If you want to have it completely rely on Wikipedia, that's fine. You can configure it like that. But if you want to avoid Wikipedia completely and attach it to scientific papers only, that's also possible, or a combination of both. And I think this is the important factor, that you have to give the user that level of control where they're responsible or co-responsible for the output of the LLM.
I see where you're coming from, but that is really depending on the target audience, right? I see that for businesses. I don't really see it for the majority of retail or individual users, right?
Yeah, I think That's a very good point. And you are kind of right in that. For the sense for the retail kind of holiday user of ChatGPT, we're not trying to steal those users. Those users will not get any additional value of using Nexus.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they use it for writing an email or how to
Yeah.
talk back to their spouse or whatever, right? And they're not gonna get any additional value. But we see a big rise of power users that are gonna beyond what ChatGPT offers, and they're looking for automation and more flexibility and freedom in order to. And these are the kind of retail users that we want to have.
No, I see that. That makes a lot of sense.
And Matthijs, let's talk a little bit about competition, because obviously you're not the only one in the world that are building something like this, right? But how is your competition looking? Is there actually people doing something very similar already in the industry, or even maybe in Web two?
Yeah.
Or are you? Yeah. So take me through that.
Fortunately, finally, there is one that we can say that's kind of a competition. We're a little bit worried because we felt like we were maybe a little bit too ahead of the curve. But Snowflake, which is a very serious data player in the world, they're a Web2 enterprise catering business. Snowflake is widely used by a lot of companies, very famous. They brought out, I believe it's called Snowflake Intelligence, that is very similar to Nexus, but it's only focused on Snowflake data and is very limited in its capabilities with MCP and being an agnostic tool instead of a tool where you have a lot of freedom. I'm sure that a tool like Snowflake Intelligence is a lot of value for enterprises that already have Snowflake and they only want to limit a use case on that Snowflake data lake that they have. But other than that, like for smaller, medium businesses, we are a far superior solution with Nexus.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you've obviously been building on that quite a long time, and I think the scope to which you aim is bigger than what most of these other companies would do, as you explained. And I'm just curious, Matthijs, because we spoke, I think it's almost like 10 months or 9 months ago, a little bit about this, right? And
That long?
back then,
Really?
I
Man,
think it was like August or September.
it's,
Yeah.
it's it's funny. Time is so crazy right now with everything that happened, in Web3 in the world. And mentally, I still feel
Flying.
like I'm in winter.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from there. It's very true. And back then, you were talking a lot to me about obviously a test net that you guys were running, and basically where you were looking to attract as many developers as possible to build on what you guys were creating, etc. Did you shift away from that a bit, or is that still going on in the back end? Because that's a whole different product than what Nexus is, right?
That's a very valid question. If you go back to that time, like 9, 10 months ago, we were working on we had a testnet live using Avalanche's Hyper SDK. Avalanche Hyper SDK is kind of like a Cosmos substrate that is a framework that you can use to build your own blockchain. Hyper SDK has amazing specs, but it's very early in development. And we were going so fast developing our chain that we were one of the first, building it out so serious using Hyper SDK. And then we realized that they are not going to move as fast as that we need. So we will never be able to have really production ready testnet and no way to know when we can have a mainnet. So we had to drop our work with Avalanche Hyper SDK and we pivoted to Cosmos. And then we had to start from scratch. Of course, we could reuse a lot that we've developed for Helix, our L1 on Hyper SDK. But still, you're building a new blockchain on Cosmos. We got some support from Cosmos, which is really cool. And we released testnet a little while back, and it's working very stable. And now we are working on finalizing that version to a production-ready mainnet in the coming months.
Okay, and how did that switch the I guess the target market that you have for the product? We spoke, of course, about the client side for Nexus, but back then, as I mentioned, you were looking a lot for developers to work with you, etc. I guess data scientists, etc. Is that still something you guys are looking for? Are you still working with as many people as possible out there, or is it really more to focus on this specific product that you're going to put in the market and then backing that by the layer one?
Yeah, so it's with how Web3 got destroyed, it was a little bit harder to find Web3 native developers that are looking to build use cases, because there are not a lot of people that want to take the risk to build something right now. So that definitely worked against us. So we were more looking into use cases with existing businesses, especially Web2 businesses who want to do something in Web3. And invite them as builders and work together with them to further shape our L1, further shape Nexus, while they're integrating and building on top of that. As opposed to looking for individual developers and reward them, we ditched that entirely and said, okay, we focus on finding actual companies that already exist, that dare to build, have money in order to fund their own development, and we help them get through it. It's a more realistic approach, I would say, right now.
But wouldn't you get any sort of support from the layer one side?
Depends what you say, what you mean with support. We definitely get support from Cosmos, you mean?
Yeah. Like, I don't know, some sort of the developer network or something. I mean, I just thought of it because a lot of layer ones basically, I'm not saying copy, but try to build a similar program to what the super teams are. And in the super teams, you have basically a lot of developers that are building on Solana. So I don't know if that is something that Cosmos also has and can kind of like tap into these resources, or how that's existing.
They can, but I think we have to make an important distinction between our layer one and most other layer ones out there. We are purpose-built layer one, so we have a layer one that's really meant for data-specific use cases. So when we look at those kind of networks, this is around the creation of DEXs, staking protocols, launch pads, stuff like that, and we're not necessarily really interested in that. Our strategy is more around onboarding as many developers as possible on Nexus, because Nexus is a web application for most retail users, but it's a complete development framework underneath where you can mix and take what you need for your business in order to integrate it. And the more users and developers are onboarded on Nexus, the more utility will automatically give to Helix when this is needed for the data workflows, for trustless collaboration, revenue distribution, and stuff like that.
Yeah, makes sense. Interesting.
Very
Okay.
interesting. And Matthijs, what is the future looking like? I mean, obviously, we spoke about launching Nexus in the coming. I think you mentioned like 2 months, but what is the next 6 to 12 months for Nuklai?
Yeah, so I'm completely all in for Nexus and Helix. These are our two core products, and like I said before, I believe that making Nexus big for users and developers will make Helix big. So we are looking to release Nexus in the next couple of weeks, next 2 weeks, something like this, and have as many users test it for free. They just have to hold a little bit of an eye in their wallet, but they don't need to spend it, to gather feedback, to gather use cases. And we already have a few community members that are seriously interested in integrating Nexus in the business that they work at or the company that they own, stuff like that. And so for us, is further building out the feature set of Nexus. We have a long roadmap of features, and maybe if we have sufficient budget in due time, we might even develop our own LLM, our own model that is going to be more fitting to Nexus around data traceability use cases, to be more truthful, transparent, traceable, stuff like that. But other than that, that's less important right now. Is going to make Nexus really big, really easy to use, and full of features so that it can automate any kind of workflow, whether it's for someone at home for their home automation, for a scientist for their research, or for a business to save costs or optimize revenue or whatever.
Yeah, very interesting. Dominic, you have any follow-up questions from your side?
Well, I'm actually pretty packed with a lot of information already. I think you guys are on a very, very good kind of track, right? And as said, like kind of initially already, right? I really do think that the approach you're taking, yes, there are some competitors out there, and yes, there is obviously some uncertainties with Web3 and some challenges, right? But that's kind of part of how it has to work in a certain way, so you can build something that's really going to be very, very stable and going to be successful in the long term, right? And I feel like you guys definitely know what you're building here and what you're doing, and what's your kind of next steps forward, basically. So sounds very,
Thank you.
very good.
I agree. Yeah, thank you. I agree about that. I think when it comes to a lot of products in Web3, you have to be lucky that you time the market well in order for your
Absolutely.
product to be successful. I think for Nexus, as you pointed out before, is a very interesting product for Web2 companies. So I honestly believe that it doesn't really matter how the market behaves. If Nexus adds real business value, then it will be a successful product regardless of how the market performs, and will also have a positive impact on the token if revenue distribution to the token will happen as well.
Yeah.
There you go. No, Matthijs, I think it's super interesting what you guys are building. I mean, I think we could do like 5 or 6 spaces where we dive into all the different aspects of what you're building, because there's so many follow-up questions we could ask and dive further into. But I think we got a bit of a global view here, which is good for people that haven't learned about what Nuklai is doing. I learned quite a lot that I didn't know about you guys yet. I was still in the old school vibes with Nuklai, so appreciate you taking the time and explaining it to us. I'm sure we'll have to meet up soon to catch up.
By the way,
the appreciation is all on me, man. Like, thank you for letting me do my story. It was a really pleasant space, excellent questions, some honest concerns that were very valid, and thank you for that. Really cool, man.
Yeah, of course, man. It's good. Dominic, sorry, I wanted to close off, but you probably had another question.
No,
right?
no, I didn't have another question. I was actually going to say, I think the last times when you guys spoke, I don't think I was in there. I think for me, it was the first time that we actually talked.
Yeah, I think that's actually true.
Yeah. Paul,
Could be.
either you had abandoned me back then, or I was kind of off, or whatever. I'm not really sure.
No, I don't know. Like, we did a few spaces where there was Matthijs and Vladimir was there, Vladimix. And,
that I know, but it wasn't about Nuklai. That's what I mean.
No.
What
Matthijs was
market?
just a general speaker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, we actually never discussed Nuklai in depth here on the show. So
that was about time. See.
Yeah, there you go. First time here, and I'm sure Matthijs and Nuklai will be back in the future when they launch their product to talk about it once again.
Exactly. Now it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is, bring the product finally live, show some exciting use cases. Then we're ready to talk to the world again.
Yeah. Showing our product finally live. I envision this SpongeBob 1.5 years later type of thing, because you guys have been building for a while, but
yeah, no, honestly, it's been too long, and I never expected that we had to take so long to bring this over the line, but we had to learn a bit more than we thought. I had to pivot with some things. But that's life. That's also Web3. That's also how fast AI is going. And in the end, I think it made us much stronger and better. And but yeah, now we're really finally there, and it's super, super exciting. I'm really proud.
Nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, Matthijs, thank you so much for joining us today. We've been almost here for an hour, and we always like to keep these spaces to an hour, so it's a good time to round off for today. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my my happy birthday day, and I'm gonna log off myself as well for today. I'll be online a little bit, but no, Matthijs, really appreciate you showing up and talking about what you guys are building, and Dominic, obviously, as always, thank you for co-hosting. And last but not least, I mean, I think the most important, guys, big shout out to everyone in the audience. Appreciate you guys all showing up again today. I see a lot of familiar faces in in the audience. I just checked through my phone, which actually doesn't buck the spaces. So I've seen most of you guys out there, and I really appreciate you guys always coming back. And I hope you learned something today. I hope you had a lot of fun. For now, I want to wish all of you a great rest of your week.
Yes.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Later.
Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Good one. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye bye.